As the most watched television broadcast in the United States, every Super Bowl is a significant occurrence for pop culture, and unless you've been living under a rock, Patrick Star, you should know by now who is headlining the halftime show this year. So let me take a guess why you're here. The FOMO is hitting you hard, isn't it? You already fear that because you don't speak Spanish well, you won't be able to understand it from a first-hand experience. Entonces, es hora de que te pongas las pilas.
If you didn't understand what I just said, you have 4 months to learn.
Or I guess by the time I'm recording this, it's 3 months and 2 weeks.
It's time to embark on a journey to become a better version of yourself by dedicating as much time that you have in these 4 months to get as good at Spanish as possible. No te preocupes. As somebody who has spent thousands and thousands of hours learning languages, I believe that you can do it. And here's what I think you should do. Make sure you stick around until the end of this video when I'm going to share my favorite resource for learning Spanish with you that you can either use on its own or in conjunction with any other method for learning the language. I don't see anyone talking about it. I don't understand why. I really think it deserves the recognition. Vamos? I think you should at least know what that means, right? Right? The first thing you will need to figure out is how do you fit language learning into your schedule? And the factors on which that will depend are your goals and your availability. Based on my personal experience learning languages and my interpretation of the data of the Foreign Service Institute, assuming that you already know English, if your goal is to reach fluency in Spanish, that will take you about 600 cumulative hours of study. If your goal is to only reach a conversational level, then that will take about 400 hours. And if you only want to grasp the very basics of the language, then 150 hours to 200 hours will do. If you want to reach fluency, on average, 300 minutes a day. If your goal is conversational proficiency, 200 minutes a day. If your goal is to cover the basics, then you should spend about 100 minutes a day.
I don't have the time. I have excuses. I end work at 5. I get home at 6:30. Then I have 5 hours of screen time to spend on my phone and my TV. If I am not brain rotting on YouTube, who's gonna be watching your videos? I'm busy. I don't have time to spend.
Okay, I'm listening, I hear your concerns, and I agree. Unless you're unemployed or taking a gap year, a gap semester, spending between 2.5 hours to 5 hours a day learning a language is not going to be feasible for most people. However, I do believe that if you were actually serious enough about learning the language, you wouldn't let the time commitment scare you. Actually, I think it's pretty manageable for most people to find a time in their day where they could spend between 45 minutes and an hour and 45 minutes trying to learn a language. If you're taking public transit to work, you can use the time on the bus or on the train to study the language. If you're driving to work and you need to focus on the road, then you can take the time to listen to audio materials. If the only time for yourself is after work and you feel like your job is leaving you mentally exhausted, then find more time before work. Try getting into a routine of going to bed earlier, waking earlier. Spend your morning hours before work on the language. I know it's much easier said than done, but I do believe that you want this hard enough and that you can succeed. Just give it a shot. In light of everything I just said, my next suggestion will appear a little counterintuitive, which is try not to fret too much about what I just said. What I mean by that is, yes, setting goals, following plans, establishing a routine, all of these are incredibly helpful when learning a language. And you should be careful to not fall victim to your expectations. You can get inspiration from other people's progress, but try to not compare yourself to them because your language learning journey is personal and is going to look very different compared to everybody else's. Sometimes life happens and you need to restructure your priorities, and that is also totally fine. Everybody's mileage varies. Some people get there quicker, for some people it takes a little more time, and that is perfectly okay. If anything, the language learners I admire the most are those who take longer to reach a particular goal, who have longer, more meandering journeys. Because to me, that shows their perseverance. That shows that in light of all of the obstacles that they faced, they still made it, which is incredibly commendable in this day and age where we're always conditioned to try to take the easy way out. Accept that however long it takes, that is how long it's going to take, and that's okay. I need water. Try to drink more water. It helps tremendously if you're doing an extensive speaking practice or intensive mental labor. Hydration helps so much. And don't forget to take breaks. Next up, let's talk about what method you should be using. Do you feel like you benefit from structure when you learn, or that you need somebody external to motivate you to do the work? Then find a language tutor or sign up for a Spanish course. Check out what Instituto Cervantes in your area has to offer. They are one of the primary centers in the world that promote Spanish language and culture, and I have never taken a course from them, but based on the quality of the online materials that they provide both for students and for teachers, it seems like they really know what they're doing. You know, if you decide to follow a course by Instituto Cervantes, it seems to me that they focus a little more on peninsular Spanish. So if your interest is in Latin American Spanish, then you might need to supplement that. If you've tried taking a language course before and that didn't work out despite all of your best efforts, I'm stressing best efforts because some people fail because they simply don't try hard enough. If you've tried all of that and that hasn't worked out for you, or you want to take more personal ownership of your own language learning journey, there are thousands and thousands of other methods that you can follow. So yeah, I'm gonna share some of my personal opinions about methods that you can read about online. Language learning apps, Duolingo. I don't think that Duolingo Spanish courses half bad, and I know people who've gotten to a pretty good level using exclusively Duolingo. However, there are certain issues with Duolingo and a lot of language apps in general that I need to warn you about. Duolingo's whole business model lately has involved trying to keep you on the app as long as possible, which sometimes means that they drag out certain concepts, intentionally make you progress more slowly than you need to by withholding grammar explanations. For example, I think Duolingo is a great platform to review and to use in conjunction with other resources and methods. And also, I find that the whole deal about streaks and Duolingo ranked or whatever it's called so strange and counterproductive, because it just encourages you to worry about the streak, worry about your rank, instead of worrying about actually making progress. It's incredibly easy to fall into the pitfall of just taking the easiest way route on the app and just blocking your progress just to maintain your streak or your position in whatever league. I think language learning needs to have an inherent level of flexibility, and streaks and leagues just hamper that flexibility. Don't let your streak and your rank become your obsession. Another methodology that I will comment on is comprehensible input, or the idea that just listening to material that is just barely slightly above your level can help you acquire the language passively. Now, personally, I think that's an incredibly inefficient approach. I think a lot of people make a lot of wrong assumptions about how we can learn just like babies. Most people, when they bring up babies in the context of language acquisition, just don't know what they're talking about, and all of the misinformation that gets spread personally irritates me because I'm not an expert, but I have a degree in neuroscience and I know a thing or two about how babies learn languages. However, with all of this being said, there's still no denying that the comprehensible input method works. It simply works. And I know people for whom the comprehensible input strategy has been the only method that has worked. Yeah, it takes more time in the long run, but it certainly feels less of a mental workout. It's more effortless, and also if the only time that you have available is while driving in your car to work, then you can fit the comprehensible input methodology into those hours of your day. If you want to give comprehensible input a try, check out what the folks at Dreaming Spanish are doing. They have an awesome community and there's so many people that are going to help you get started on that track. I have also personally come up with a methodology that I like to follow when I'm learning languages. I've developed it with the goal of making the language learning process as efficient as possible. I call it a combination of parallel progression and incomprehensible input. The idea is to first very shallowly acquaint yourself with all of the most basic vocabulary and all of the grammar of the language. Then after you have that basic toolbox, you start going into incomprehensible texts very slowly. Treat incomprehensible texts like a puzzle where you would pause on every word that seems somehow unfamiliar, that catches your attention, analyzing it, figuring out whatever interests you, developing both your understanding of the text and the grammar and the structure of the language. I have this video over here where I go into detail about all of the aspects of this strategy and how I used it to learn Spanish myself. It's a rather long one, so if you don't have the time right now, save it to your watch later. And I have this video series over here where I'm demonstrating how I'm using this methodology, learning Italian, a new language for me. If you want to try this out, let me know. I would love to know what other people's experiences are with this methodology. However, with this brief overview of language learning methodologies, the best method for learning Spanish would be the method that works best for you, based on your needs, personality, availability. Sure, we can have a discussion about which method is more or less efficient, but at the end of the day, as long as you have a method that works, that you feel like you can dedicate the amount of time that it takes consistently, then just go along with that method. Don't overthink it. Lastly, here is my favorite resource for learning Spanish that I really don't see anyone really talking about. Let me demonstrate. These are the Spanish proficiency exercises made available by the University of Texas Austin. I will leave a link in the description. You can navigate this resource by going to the site index right here, and this is what the interface looks like. The website provides 85 language tasks separated by level, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and superior. There's also an index of grammar points at the bottom. You have been provided with all of the resources necessary to talk about any of the topics here. This is a task about your TV viewing habits. Let's see what they offer here. Gracias Firefox por subestimar mi nivel de español. Muchísimas gracias. Each task offers 6 videos of native speakers talking about the topic at hand. And something I really love about this resource is the diversity of dialects that it features. The first example that is provided is always much simpler, and you can choose what transcript to look at while watching the video. Let me play this one so you get an idea of how it works.
El sistema de cable o de satélite permite que los televidentes disfruten de muchos canales.
You
Ahora
can
todo es
notice
muy
that these
especializado.
simplified examples
Hay
are
canales de
always
deportes, de
scripted. Just
espectáculos, de
look at her
noticias, de
eyes.
música.
They keep
Algunos
going
con temas
left to
culturales muy
right,
interesantes
left to
sobre
right, de
animales,
izquierda a la
descubrimientos
derecha.
científicos, viajes y un sinfín.
On the other hand, the other examples are always unscripted. They're a little more complicated, but they give you a good idea of how Spanish is spoken casually. Let's see.
Bueno, mis malos hábitos televisivos es, por lo general paso todo el día en la universidad, entonces cuando llego a la casa me toca o ayudarle a Katherine a cocinar la cena o a lavar platos o hacer algo en la casa, comemos y luego encendemos el tele. Por lo general vemos una novela brasileña que pasa en Telemundo, que nos gustan mucho las novelas brasileñas porque más que una novela parece una película. Luego de eso termina como a las 10, entonces ponemos Friends y ahí vemos, y ahí hasta que nos dé sueño nos vamos a la cama. Entonces creo que eran Friends.
With each task, you have the following provided. You have useful related vocabulary. You have set phrases that are really awesome. You can just study these as whole sentences. And you also have relevant grammar points. Some of these are exactly the points I covered in one of my most recent videos. I swear, I picked this task as an example totally at random. But honestly, if you go through one task per day, preparing and learning to say your own responses to each of these topics, in 3 months you can probably get to a conversational level in Spanish. That is feasible and more than enough. Thank you for joining me today. I know I was a little stern at times, but still, I hope I was able to motivate you to finally set up a structure for yourself, to set yourself up for success in your study of Spanish. If you've enjoyed this video, I think you will also like my other language-related content and my travel vlogs. I have planned an upcoming series of videos that I think will be perfect for your situation, so if you're wondering what I have in mind and you want to take advantage of it, you could consider subscribing, wink wink wink. But yeah, this was all from me for today. Nos vemos la próxima.